Welcome back to programming C Sharp, programming Windows Forms applications tutorial. In the previous lesson, we said we were going to create a practical application, and we said we were going to create a travel allowance calculator. So we gave an overview of the application we were going to create in the previous lesson. Although there was something I forgot to show you, that's in the previous lesson. I said I was going to show you what the database looked like. That's the hard paper copy of the distances between states. So I'll just open the one I've created for the web-based version application that I created. I think I had coded the distances, so you just see a sample of what it looks like, so you understand the difficulty in or the time it will take you if you were to do it manually. That's if you were to find the distances between the states manually. So I think I have it somewhere in let me see if I can remember. Okay, it should be in here. GitHub. Um, uh, okay, here it is. This is the this is the HTML code, and this is the JavaScript code. So it's embedded inside the JavaScript code. So I'll just open this with Sublime. Open with Sublime text. Okay. Okay, so here it is. This is what the kilometer chart actually looks like, even in the hard paper. The only difference is we this is just a code version. I just wrote this in JavaScript, and you can see. Okay, so for example, this is actually what very similar to what it looks like. So it's like a triangle of some values, and the values you're seeing in there, the integers you're seeing, are the kilometers, the distances in kilometers between states. So for example, okay, let me just give a little example of how you would read it. So you can see this Abakaliki distances. So Abakaliki is actually a capital of a state. Okay. Abeokuta is the capital of a state. Abuja is the federal capital territory. All these are the different capitals of the different states. Okay. So what I actually have here is an array. So I just declared an array. So but don't worry too much about the array. What you should notice is that these distances, as it says, Abakaliki distances, these distances here, these 656, this is one, 477 is another distance, 566. So the distances are separated by commas. Okay, these are the distances of the different states from Abakaliki. Okay, so and the way they are arranged is that they are arranged in alphabetical order. Okay, so for example, this 656 is the distance of Abeokuta from Abakaliki. Okay, so the distance between Abakaliki and Abeokuta is 656 kilometers. Okay, so the next value is the distance for the next state. So 477 is the distance of Abuja to Abakaliki, or from Abuja from Abakaliki, or Abakaliki from Abuja. Also notice that the way the pyramid is created is such that there is no repetition. Okay, so if you've already recorded a distance from of Abeokuta from Abakaliki, then in the Abeokuta distances, the distance of Abakaliki from Abeokuta will not be repeated. Okay, so you will notice that this array, sorry, I just okay. So you'll notice that the array for Abeokuta distances is one item less than the array of Abakaliki distances. That is because these are all the distances of the other states from Abeokuta, excluding the distance of Abakaliki, because it's already mentioned here. Okay, so it's just a way of compacting the distances such that there's no repetition whatsoever. Okay, that is why, obviously, the distance of the last state, the Yola distances, you'll notice that there's no distance mentioned there, because by the time you've covered all these distances, then obviously there's no distance of Yola from Yola. So all the other distances must have been implicitly covered in here. Okay, so for example, the distance of Yola from Abakaliki is this 954. Okay, because that's the last item which represents the last state. The distance of Yola from Abeokuta is this 1560 kilometers. Okay, the distance of Yola from Abuja is 704. Okay, so there is no repetition. That is why as the states keep going down, you'll notice that the array keeps shrinking. Okay, it keeps shrinking until when it gets to Yola distances where there are no distances explicitly mentioned in the array of Yola distances. Okay, so if in the program I want to find the distance of Yola from Abuja, I will have to look that up in the Abuja distances. Okay. 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 Just to make some things clear, also you'll notice that there are no distances of Abakaliki from Abakaliki. That wouldn't make sense. It will obviously be zero, so we do not include it. We do not include that. So, for example, if you notice this Akure distances, note that this 310 is the distance of Abakaliki from Akure. 342 is the distance of Abeokuta from Akure. 885 kilometers is the distance of Abuja from Akure. And then 168 kilometers is the distance of Ado Ekiti from Akure. Now, this 711 kilometers is the distance of the next state. That is the distance of Asaba from Akure, and not Akure from Akure. Okay. Okay. That's how the what the kilometer chart looks like. And by now you will realize that for someone to actually find the distance between two states manually, at least, even if you're used to the table, it will take you some time to look it up, right? You'll have to trace, first of all, find the first state or the origin state where the distance is starting, where the journey is starting from, and then you'll have to kind of count. Though in the actual kilometer chart, there's a little indicator which shows the state that's at the top, but even with that, like it's really not something well, let's just say it is prone to mistakes. It's easily prone to mistakes. Okay, you can easily make mistakes when trying to trace the distances. Okay, so that's why that's another advantage of having of creating a program that will find the distances for you automatically. Okay, so that's it about the distances. By the way, because I've already written these distances down in my, you can see I hard coded it. It's not like I'm getting it from magically from somewhere. No, I hard coded it into the JavaScript code. So we're still, I'll just come down here when the time when the time when it's necessary. That's in our Windows Forms application program, where we're going to put or where we're going to get the database. We'll just come and copy this hard code and put it there. The only difference is we would not. I don't like declaring variables as var in that's in C sharp. Of course, this would also work in C sharp, but I don't like using the var keyword in C sharp anyway. Okay, all right, let's head back. What today's lesson is going to be is that today's lesson is going to be about designing the user interface of the Windows Forms application, or of the kilometer of the travel allowance calculator program we're going to create. Okay, so we've already seen from the previous lesson, we've seen a sample of what it should look like. Okay, so we're going to do that today. We're just going to design the user interface. So let's head to Visual Studio. And did we create a project already? No, not yet. So we're going to create a new project now, and we're going to call it should we call it travel allowance calculator? I think that's okay. Sorry, this is where we select the type of application. Aha, so you remember, if you're creating a Windows Forms application, we already have a shortcut here because we've used it before, so we can just use the shortcut here, or we can search for it in here. So just to show you a different way you can do this, because we've recently used Windows Forms application.NET framework, we can just choose it from here. Okay, so I've clicked on that, and I'll click next. And then in here, the name, I'm going to call it travel allowance calculator. Okay, and we're going to choose the folder where we're going to keep it. It's going to be on our desktop as usual, my apps folder, and then we create a folder in here, new folder, and we'll just call that folder travel allowance calculator. Okay, so that's the folder. I'll choose the folder and click on select folder, and then click create. So that will create my solution and my project, and there we have it. So we've already seen this. We've seen how to create a Windows Form application, and right now, if we run the application, obviously it's going to run, and the only thing is that it's just going to be a blank application with nothing there. So just to start, let's go ahead and change the title for the application up here. We'll call it travel allowance calculator. So I've stopped the program for now. Remember how to do it. You select the form. I've clicked on the form to select it, and then I head to my properties window, and then look for text. That's the text property. Is the property here? It is. Text is the property that controls what is written up there. Okay, so I'm going to call it on the right hand side of the property. So this is the left hand side, this is the right hand side. That's where we will enter the value. I'll write travel allowance. By the way, I'll use spaces. Travel allowance space calculator. Okay, and then I hit enter on my keyboard, and that's good. All right, so we've set the title. The next is the controls in here. What do we need? Okay, before I start, I think I've forgotten the features, so I'll just head to the notepad where we kept the features. So here are the features we were talking about. So the user should be able to choose a source starting point. Okay. Okay. Rather than check the features here, let's look at the sample. Okay, we could just go ahead with the features here, and we'll choose the controls to use, which will go in line with what will easily allow us to implement the feature. So what I mean by that is that, you see here it says the user should be able to choose a source starting point for the journey. Okay, so this means that we should have like a kind of select box. Okay, just like you saw in the web-based version. In the web-based version, I think I used a combo box there. So what we need here is, obviously, it's also a combo box. Or you could, well, ideally for usually a combo box is very suitable for things like that, where you have items where the user is going to select one of the items. Okay, But just to let you know, when you're creating your Windows Forms application or any type of application whatsoever, you as the programmer, you decide what control, or sometimes you can even create the control from scratch. Okay, so the controls we're going to use today, obviously, they are going to be controls that are already embedded in .NET, so they're already available in the toolbox without you creating anything from scratch. But I'm just giving you a heads up. That's for later applications. When you start creating your applications, you're not limited to the controls that you see here. Okay, you can actually create your own controls. Okay, so for the for something like a combo box that allows the user to select an option from a list of options, there are a couple of things we could use. We could use a combo box. I don't know if that's what it's called in Visual Studio. So let's just go to Visual Studio and check toolbox. So notice what I did. I select the form. I then go to my toolbox. Look at the toolbox on the left here. Remember, if your toolbox is not showing, go to, so for example, if this is closed, so you can see the toolbox is no longer there. If it's not showing you the toolbox there, you go to window. Actually, it was in view, we saw it. You go to view and you search for toolbox. Here is toolbox. You can see there's even a control to bring it up, Control Alt X. So if you should hold Control Alt and press X, it will bring up your toolbox. Or you can come to view and then just click on toolbox here, and you can see the toolbox window is back. Okay, so we go to the toolbox, and I'm going to try and look for the, okay, here it is. It's actually called combo box. Okay, so that's convenient. I'm just looking in if I might find a better control I could use, but I can't really find any better control than a combo box for that. So I'm going to click on the combo box, drag it onto the form, and I'm going to move it to somewhere here and drop it. So that's the combo box. I'll just drag it a bit to enlarge it, and that's our combo box. So this is the combo box where the user actually selects the starting point for the journey. Okay, now notice that in order, if you should just create, okay, let me just run this program right now as it is without doing anything. I've just added the combo box. Notice if we run this program, notice what's happening. It's just a combo box. Obviously, there are no items. I haven't populated it with items. But apart from that, that's not even what I want to show you. There's nothing telling the user what this combo box is meant for. Okay, so that's where you use labels. Okay, that's where you will find labels to be very handy. Okay, labels in Windows Forms applications are used to actually well, they actually just like they call themselves, they're just labels. Okay, they're just like text on your form. Okay, you usually use that text to kind of tell the user or give the user a hint of what the control in front of it is supposed to be for. Okay, so for example, for this combo box, we would perhaps like the user to know that he's supposed to select the starting point of the journey using this combo box. Okay, so we'll just add a label to the left of this combo box to let the user know that. Okay, so I've stopped the application. I'll go to Toolbox and I'll look for a label. So it's here. I'll click and hold the label, drag it in, and I'll drop it to the left of the combo box. Notice if you click and hold and drag, notice the lines, the guidelines that come out. So notice if it's here, there's no guideline, but the moment I bring it near the combo box on the right, you can see there's a guideline. Now that guideline is telling me this label is directly at the moment as it is arranged at exactly the same, that's the top of the label, the top boundary of the label is on exactly the same level as the top level of the combo box on the right. Okay, if I drag it down a bit, you'll see that okay, for this orange sorry, pink line, it's just telling you that the bottom line of the label is going to appear, is on exactly the same level as the writing that will appear into that's the bottom of the text that will appear in the combo box. Okay, so always these guidelines are always very useful when you want to quickly eyeball or set up your interface without actually looking into the properties window and look at the location. So this is where the location property is, where you set the X and Y position of your objects. That's the controls in your on your form. But if you use the without actually coming in here, you can see at the moment the X component is on 55, but notice that the Y component is on 65. Now notice if I click on the okay, sorry, it's not yet on. Okay, it's on the same level now. So notice the Y component is on 57. Notice if I click on this combo box, you will see that the Y component of the location is on 57 also. Okay, so you can, rather than coming here and typing, which is quite slow, you can use the guidelines that appear, okay, to set it up the way you want it. So for now, I think I would prefer if the label is directly on the bottom. That's the bottom boundary of the label is exactly to the bottom boundary of the combo box. So I'll leave it like this. And then another thing I would like is I would like to okay, is there a way to enlarge this label? It seems like I can't. I was thinking there's a way you could drag out the, okay, there's no way you could actually change the sizing of the label. Okay, you can only set the location. For the size, I think you can drag it. No, you can't do that, I don't think. Okay, so rather than have it, you can see at the moment it's written label 1 in there. Okay, but that's not what we want to be showing there. So what I mean is, if we run this, look at what it's saying. It's just saying level 1. Okay, that's not something helpful. Okay, we want something that will let the user know or give the user a hint that this combo box is for you to select the starting point of the journey. Okay, so I'll terminate that. I'll select the label. Notice the label is selected. I'll go to the properties window. Again, I'll look for the text property. Okay, so for a label, the text property, here's the text property. You can see for a form, the text property of a form is what controls the title of that form. But for the label, the text property of the label is what actually controls the content of that label, what's written inside the label. Okay, so you can see at the moment it's label 1. I'm going to change that and I'll call it starting point, or let's call it journey start point. So journey start point. Okay, I'll hit enter, and you can see immediately the label enlarges so that it accommodates the size of the text. Okay, so I'm just going to shift it to the left there. Also, after the point, I'm just going to add a colon. Okay, so it looks like that is describing what is in front of it. Okay, and I'll also just drag that to okay, I think I like this. All right, so that's for that label. By the way, also notice that you're not limited to this text. That's the text styling you're seeing there. You can actually enlarge the size of the text. It's the boundary of the label you can't change. Okay, so to change the size of the text, notice what I'm going to do. I've selected the label. I'll go in there in the properties window and I'll search for font. Okay, here's font. You can see the font has options. It has a little plus on the left, so it means it has some other options apart from the font. So you can see here I can choose the font, that's okay. Let me just show you how I brought up this dialog. On the font, a font is on the left. You can see in there on the right, it's written Microsoft Sans Serif 8.25 PT. That's 8.25 point, I think. You can see on the right hand side of that, there's a little a box with three dots. So if I click on that box with three dots, that's what brings up this dialog box. Okay, and in here I can choose. You can see this should be very common. Okay, of course you must have used Windows. You must have used Microsoft Word before, so you know what this is used for. You can select the style of the text. You can select whether it's bold, oblique, or regular. You can select if it's the size of the text. So I'll just change the size of the text to show you that you can do that. So I've selected 20 and I'll click OK. You can see that causes uh, the label to overshadow or overlap the combo box. So I'll just click on the combo box and drag it out to the right a bit. Okay, so I think I'm happy with this for now. Just know that I'm doing this to show you that you can actually change. Okay, it's not like it's necessary, you have to do this. No, I'm just showing you that depending on what you want as the programmer, you can set the settings for what the user interface looks like. Okay, all right, so I'll just select the form again. For the default size of the form, I'll just increase it a bit so that I can add some more controls on the right here. Okay, also I'll enlarge it a bit to the bottom. Notice this is the default size when you start. Okay, when you usually while it's running, when you enlarge the form, it kind of covers the whole screen. Okay, so let me just show you that. So you can see this is the default size when you run the application. What I'm saying is, if you click on enlarge, it will cover the whole screen. Okay, so it's not like this is going to be the size of the window forever. Okay, I'll just stop that, and then next, let's go up to our notepad and see. So we've designed this. Obviously, we've done the source starting point. Next, the user should be able to choose a destination endpoint for the journey. Okay. To do that, all we need is something like this again. Okay, so like we saw in the web-based version of the program, it's actually very similar. It's a very similar control for selecting the starting point and selecting the end point. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to duplicate this. Okay, rather than of course you can go in here and repeat the step again and create another control in here. Okay, another way which is even shorter is, notice what I'm going to do. I'll click on the combo box. I've selected that combo box. I'll now hold on control key on my keyboard. Okay, if I hold control key, I'll click on the label, and when I do that, both the label and the combo box are now selected. Okay, now whatever I do in the properties window is going to affect both the label and the combo box. Now that is why if you check the properties window now, you'll see that the properties have reduced. That's the number of properties are now less than the actual number of properties. That is because for a property that exists in a label but does not exist in a combo box, is not going to appear now because we have both selected. Okay, the properties you're seeing are properties that both exist in a label and a combo box. Okay, so it's like the intersection of properties between the label object and the combo box object is what you're going to see in the properties window, so that whenever you change any of them, both properties of this and this are going to be affected. Okay, Anyway, we're not going to be we're not going to be altering the properties here. What we're going to do is we're going to duplicate. So let me show you how you do that. You can right click, sorry, not out there. I'll click that and hold control and click that again. To right click, you're supposed to right click inside one of the boundaries. That's either inside here or inside here. That's on the combo box or on the label. If you have 100 items selected, you can right click on any one of the 100. Okay, it will still work. So I'm going to right click in on the label because the area is bigger. I'll just right click that, and you can see now I have some options. Among the options I have copy. Okay, so I'm going to click on copy. Also notice you have a shortcut of Control plus C. So rather than do copy, right clicking and do copy, you can actually hold Control and C, and that will copy do the same thing. So I'll just click on copy. Also, now I can right click anywhere and choose paste. Okay. Also, I can do Control V rather than do paste. Okay. All right. Let's just use the paste. Notice after I paste, what happens is that these two objects are now different from these two objects, even though they look very similar. Okay, the two objects, these two look very similar to these two, but they are different. How do you know they are different? You can even select. Okay, let's select the label here. Let's go to the name property. That's one of the most important properties in an object. So the name property, here it is, the name property, that's for this one. Notice what is written there. It's called label 1. Now notice if I come to this property, if I come to this object, notice its name label, it is label 2. Okay, so the variable that's holding this object is called label 1, and the variable that's holding this object is called label 2. That's what that means. Okay, they are actually two different objects. Okay. All right. Now what we're going to do, the same thing for this and this. Okay, they are two different objects. Before we go further, I'll just select this combo box. That's the combo box for selecting the starting point. I don't like that it's called combo box 1. So I'll go to the properties window. I'm going to change the name property. I'll come to the right and I'll call it, let's see, what do we call it? Let's call it start point combo box. So I called it start point combo box. The reason I'm ending it with combo box is so that I know that whenever I'm coding, the moment I encounter start point combo box, I know that that variable is actually holding a combo box object. Okay, and the combo box object it's holding is the one that's allowing the user to select the starting point. Okay, so that's why I'm calling it that. So I'll hit on enter on my keyboard, and that name is set. I'll do the same for this. I'll go to the name property. I'll change it to end point. Also notice I'm starting the end with a small e. Okay, remember variables are usually, well, that's the convention we use. If you use a capital letter, it will still work, but it's better to always stick to one convention. Okay, so endpoint combo box. Okay, and I'll hit enter, and that changes the name of that. Now I'm going to click. Notice another way you can select. I can click and drag from here to here. Now that will select both. Remember the other time I showed you how to click and then hold control button and click, hold control. If I click this now, the three are going to be selected. Okay, so I'll just click in here to deselect all. Another way to select more than one item is to click and drag around the items. Okay, so I've selected the two. I'm going to click within one of them. I'll click from here and I'll drag and I'll drop them somewhere here. Okay, notice now that they are on the same, using that guideline. Notice the guideline. They're now on the same Y position. I'll just shift it to the right a bit further and make sure they are on the same Y component, and I'll drop it there. Okay, so rather than have this saying Johnny start point, rather than have this say Johnny start point, this is supposed to be Johnny end point. Okay, so I'll select that text box. I'll go to the properties window, scroll down, look for text. Remember the property that controls that is a text property. Here it is, and I'll change that to Johnny end point. Okay, and I'll press enter, and that's that. Okay, now I'm just going to try and speed up because the video has gotten a bit longer than I anticipated. I'll go to Toolbox. What's the okay, I've forgotten the next thing we need to add, so I'll just go to the notepad and look it up. So we've implemented a control that allows the user to do this. We've created or added another control that allows the user to do that. The next thing is the user should be able to change the allowance per kilometer. Okay, so the best thing we can use for something like that, notice that what the user is going to select there is like the price or the payment. That's the payment or the allowance, the allowance payment per kilometer. Okay, so the user is supposed to be able to change that. So the best I can think of, or the best control I can think of to achieve this is going to be a text box. Okay, so I'll show you what a text box looks like. It's very similar to the combo box. The only difference between a text box and a combo box is the combo box has a little triangle there, which if you click, it will show you a lot of items in there, whereas the text box has only a space where you can type. Okay, so let's go to Toolbox, and I'll look for text box. It should be somewhere down because they are all notice that the controls are arranged in alphabetical order. So text box should be somewhere here. Here's the text box. I'll click and drag, and I'll drop it down here. I'll put it somewhere in between these two, and I'll shift it to the right a bit, and I think that's okay. Remember, it's just a number. It's a number the user is supposed to enter there. So also remember we need a label that will give the user a hint. So I'll scroll up within the toolbox, and I'll look for label, label control. Here it is. I'll drag it and drop it in there. Remember what we used, the font size we use for this is 20. So as label 3 is selected there, first I'm going to go into the properties window. I'll scroll up to font. Where's the font? AF. So here's the font. I'll click on the right and click that little box, and I'll change it to 20, and I'll click OK, and I'll reset the position so it's directly after that. The next thing is the text. So while the label is selected, I'll go down in the properties window and look for text property, and here's the text property. I'm going to change that from label 3. It's supposed to say allowance or payment per kilometer. Okay, kilometer should be spelled TER, can't remember. Okay, this is embarrassing. I'll use TRE. Okay. It doesn't look right. I'll change it to TER. Okay. I think maybe one of them is the American spelling. This should be the American spelling. Okay. Doesn't matter. I'm not here to teach you English. I'm here to teach you programming. So if that's wrong, pardon me. Press enter. That's the label, and this I'll now click on the text box. I'm going to change what I'm going to change in the text box is the name of the text box, so that when we start coding, it's not going to be called text box 1. It should be called allowance text box, or we can call it allowance per km. Notice the K is capital K while the M is small m. Allowance per km text box. Okay, I think I like that. I'll press enter, and that's the name of that text box. Okay, so all these name properties, they're not really useful within the design view. Okay, they're only useful when you start writing code. Okay, so when I want to access, whenever in my code I want to access this text box, all I need to do is I'll just write this allowance per kilometer text box. Okay, once I call on this variable within my code, that variable is going to have a reference to this particular object. Okay, all right. The next thing, let's look up Notepad, and with the click of a button, so we're going to need a button. The program should tell the distance in kilometers between the selected states. Okay, so first we're going to need a button which the user should click, and then we're going to need okay, I think a text box will be good for this, where that's where we'll show the output. Okay, notice that we're not going to be writing our output to the console now. Since we have a Windows application, it will be more convenient to have the output displayed on the form, okay, rather than on the console. Okay, okay, so we're going to have a text box where the output is going to tell the user the distance between the start point and end point, and also another text box that will tell the user the total amount that should be paid to the traveler or the staff. Okay. Okay, so first we're going to need a button. I've clicked on the form. I'll go to Toolbox. I'll click and drag on the button, and I'll drop it in here. Okay, so for a button, notice that there are a couple of things we're going to change on the button. First, the button says button 1, which we don't want. We don't want it to just show button 1. Rather than button 1, I think a much better text that should be written there is calculate allowance. Okay, so rather than have it as button 1, we're going to change. So while the button is selected, we'll go into the properties window, go to the text property. Now the text property for a button is what controls what is written on the button, on top of the button. Okay, so I'm going to change that from button 1 to calculate allowance. Okay, and I'll press enter. Notice for the button, it does not automatically or dynamically resize the button to accommodate the full text that's written in here. Okay, so you'll have to do that manually. I'll drag the button. You can see I use this right little box on the right boundary, right mid boundary of the button to enlarge it, and then I'll drag it. I'll drag the little box on the bottom boundary of the button in order to enlarge it a bit. So I think this is big enough for me. I'll just reset it to somewhere here. Notice you can set it wherever you want on the form. Also, I'm going to change the font. I don't like the font is very small. I'll change the font to 20. So I'll scroll up again to look for font. Here is font. Where is font? Here it is. And I'll click there, click on the box, choose 20, and I'll choose OK. Okay, you can see by changing the font, by making the font bigger, you can see that the not everything shows, not the whole text shows. So I'll just resize that button so that it shows. Also notice that if you enlarge, if the button is not wide enough to accommodate the text, if it is high enough, it will kind of wrap the text, which is actually quite nice. Another thing I don't like is that it doesn't really look like a button now. It doesn't look like a clickable button, but I'll just leave it for, okay, it actually does look like a clickable button. It's because of the boundary. That's why we didn't see the shade around the boundaries of the button. Okay, so it looks nice now. We can actually run this program for now and test and see what it looks like. I've clicked on play. You can see this is what the form is going to look like. And notice if you hover on the button, by default, it's going to kind of give you a hover animation and change the color of the background of the button. Okay, so even without you setting that, it does it for you by default. Okay, which is quite nice. It shows that this is something you can click. Okay, all right. Next, what we're going to do is I'm going to stop this first. The next thing we're going to do is the output window. That's where we want to be the output of the program to be displayed. So, like I said, we're going to use two text boxes. I'll first go to we'll go to Toolbox, look for text box, and where's text box? Okay, here's text box. I'll just drag it in there. I'll drop it. This is going to be the text box that shows the distance in kilometers. So I think it should be the same size with this. So you can see by dragging it just under this, you can see the guidelines show you that they are exactly the same size with this one. So I think I like that. I'll leave it somewhere here. And then remember, we'll need a label that tells the user what that text box, what that output is for. So I'll just go to label, and here's label. I'll just drag it in there and drop it on here and change the font size to 20. Okay, and after that I'll reposition it and also change the so while the label is selected, we're going to change the text property of the label, and what we're going to call it is remember, this text box is what shows that's after calculating the allowance. It's going to show the distance between start point and end point. So we're going to call this distance between distance, let's just call it distance of journey. Okay, so we're going to call it we're going to what's going to be written inside this label is going to be distance of journey, and then in bracket I'm going to write km, meaning kilometers, and close the bracket and then press enter. So you can see that kind of overlaps on top of the text box. So I'll just reposition it. I'll set it on the same position with this one. Okay, so this guideline, this blue one, is telling me that this is on the same position as this. That's on the right hand side. Okay, all right. So that's for that. And now, rather than create another set of text box and label, I'll just select these two and copy. I'll hold Control and press C. That's copy, and then hold Control and press V on my keyboard. That's paste, and I'll drag it under this, and then I'll now click on this label, and I'll change the text. Rather than show distance of journey, this should show this should be allowance or payable allowance in I'll just put N in brackets. That's the currency, Nigerian naira, or I could make it NGN. I think that's more accurate. So I'll press enter, and I'll reposition this to make sure it's on the same position on the left or to the right of these. And then the last thing we're going to do, notice that this text box is going to show the payment per kilometer, which I think this text box is large enough considering the size of the font. Remember, we didn't change the size of this font. Okay, so it's on the default size. Same with this, is on the default size. Same with this. This is going to show the distance in kilometers. This can take up to I believe 6 to 7 digits with no problem. But for this, which is the payable allowance, I think we should enlarge it a bit. So I'll just notice what I did. I clicked on this little box on the right boundary where it allows me to drag and enlarge it. So I'll just make it that big. And that is it for our user interface for now. The user interface is finished. We can run that and just, okay, not completely finished because if you click, remember we changed the names of these controls, but we forgot to change the names of this, and this control. Okay, let's start with the button. First, let's make sure we change the name of this. If we check the name, you can see it's called allowance per kilometer text box. For the button, this calculate allowance button, it's called button 1, which I don't like. We're going to change the name and we're going to call it compute button. So we'll call it compute button. Okay, and press enter. That changes the name of that. We'll click on this. Rather than say text box 1, we're going to call it distance output. So distance output, output should be one word, output text box. Okay, I press enter. That's that for this one. And then finally this text box, rather than have it as called as text box 2, we'll call it allowance output text box. Okay, and again, output should be one word, so we shouldn't be capitalizing P, it should be small p. Press enter, and that is it for the user interface. If we test run this application at the moment, you can see this is what it looks like. At the moment, if you click on the arrow on this journey start point and journey end point, you see that there's nothing in there because we haven't populated it. Okay, we're going to populate it in the we can actually do that in the user interface, but I feel it's not sorry, in the properties window, but I feel we can also fill it up in code when we start writing code. But why I'm not doing that now is because I feel it's not a job, it's not a user interface job to be providing data for these controls. Okay, so it should be a job under we could say programming. Okay, so that's why we're not populating those text boxes, those combo boxes. Okay, then the next thing you can see that you can actually type in here because it's a text box. Okay, because it's a text box, you can type in there. This shows payment per kilometer. I just noticed that rather than have this output as a text box, we could have actually also done the same with since it's an output. We don't expect the user to type anything in here. We could have actually used the label, which is, I think, a much better control to represent an output rather than have a text box. But no matter, we can leave it like this. It still works. Maybe after creating the full program, I'll show you what I mean by just changing the text box to a label, and you'll see that it's much cleaner because by doing so, the user cannot come in here and type anything. Okay, it tells the user, it will kind of tell the user that you're not the one to provide anything in here. It is the computer that provides the output after clicking calculate allowance. Also, notice you can actually click this button, although nothing happens because we haven't we haven't written anything to occur if this button is clicked. Okay, so that's it for the user interface. Our user interface is complete. In the next lesson, we're going to start wiring these items so that we create our working application. Okay. So I'll stop this video here, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Not that.